Welcome to this special show on Interim Budget 2019. We have with us Mr. T. N. Ninan to speak and discuss about the implications of Interim Budget 2019. Thank you, Mr. Ninan, for joining the show. To me, this doesn't look like just an interim budget. There is a package for almost everybody. There's a middle income tax, small taxpayers. There's a package for unorganized workers. There's a package for farmers, and also one gets a sense that the election bugle has been sounded. What's your take on this entire interim budget exercise?
I agree with you, Ashok, that the government clearly has an eye on the coming elections, and that is not an unreasonable thing to look at. But having said that, I think we also have to recognize that the overall bill is not beyond control. On the major items, the farm income support scheme is 75,000 crores. The tax write-off for those earning up to 5 lakh is 18,500. And if you take the health insurance scheme announced a few months ago, the budget for next year 6,000. So overall, it comes to almost exactly 100,000 crores, which is a little over half of. For next year, it will be about half of 1% of GDP.
Yeah.
Now, it's not a small sum, but it's not an uncontrollable figure, especially given that they have squeezed other items of expenditure to create the fiscal space to do this. And given that overall deficit remains at about 3.4%, it is a responsible budget. It's not an irresponsible budget.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with you that 3.4% of GDP is not not alarming at all in any way. But there are some questions on the numbers, particularly on the revenue side, on the corporation tax side. So, what is your view on that?
See, the problem with doing a budget on the 1st of February instead of the last day of February is that you are 2 months, 1/6 of the year is still left. And that is the busy part of the year. So many numbers are really just pure guesstimates. At one level, a lot of the revised numbers for this year are just a repeat of the original budget figure.
That's right. Yeah.
They haven't really done a revised figure. It's just repeating the same budget figure. So I don't know if there's great value in having the budget move forward by a month. But having said that, there are questions about revenue.
Corporation tax revenue.
Corporation tax is one. Clearly, disinvestment is an issue. They're assuming they'll meet the target of 80,000, but they've done less than half that till today.
Yeah. 35,000 crore to be precise.
That's right. So another 45 has to be done. There's no way you can raise 45,000 crores in the market in the next 2 months. So it's going to be an intra-public sector kind of adjustment, which isn't really disinvestment, and that's what they did last year as well.
That's right.
So, there is an issue about the quality of those revenue numbers.
Yeah. Going forward, do you get the sense that personal income tax rates of around they are expected to grow by around 18% next year, and they already grew by around 17% in the current year. Now, this kind of buoyancy, in spite of having given away 18,500 crore of tax revenue from 3 crore or 30 million taxpayers, is that something that you think is an exaggerated or an over-optimistic assumption?
Well, look at it this way. In the 5 years of this government, they've taken up the tax to GDP ratio from about a little over 10% of GDP to 11.9%. Which is frankly a huge achievement. I don't know of any other government that has done this. And for next year, they are budgeting that it will go up from 11.9 to 12.1. That is not a big increase. So I wouldn't worry too much about the revenue numbers. If it doesn't come under one head, it will come under the other head. So long as the economy is doing well, the revenue will come. So that's not my worry just now. My worry is more on the expenditure side.
Okay.
They have really squeezed major programs to make the fiscal space for these new announcements.
That's right.
There's no extra money for Narega.
Yeah. Actually, the money for Narega is slightly lower than what was spent in the current year.
The highway program is getting a squeeze. I don't immediately remember, but quite a few programs are actually civil aviation is getting less money. Lots of budgetary heads are actually getting less money next year than in the current year.
Yeah.
So, and some of them are quite major programs of the government. Swachh Bharat is getting less money.
Absolutely.
So they have squeezed. Now they don't advertise it. Defense is getting just 7% more.
Yeah.
That is barely coping with inflation.
That's right.
All of these are...
And capital expenditure, which actually in the current year did quite well by increasing by 20%, is supposed to grow by only 6% next year.
So, the history of this government has been that they've kept expenditure under tight control. That is how they managed to keep the deficit under control. So, and also capital expenditure next year is going up only about 6%. So, finance ministers like to make grand speeches announcing big numbers, but when you actually see the detail, there is expenditure control. Now, I welcome it because you're being responsible.
On two issues on the taxation side, one is the government announcing changes through the finance bill on tax rates which need to be voted by Parliament. And the second is the tax reform promises were made. These two are likely to get different reactions, but what would be your reaction to both these moves?
Well, technically, if Parliament passes law, then it's passed, no? And it's a money bill.
Okay. Lok Sabha only has to pass it.
So, you can be a purist about processes. And this government is not particularly given to the right processes.
That's right.
But Parliament has to pass it, otherwise it doesn't come into effect. So I don't see a serious issue there. I think the broader question is whether the vision that the finance minister laid out for the future has any reality in it. To say that this will be a $10 trillion economy by 2030 is to say that we will quadruple the size of the economy in 12 years, which effectively means 15% annual growth. Now, this is not real.
That's right.
So in a budget speech in Parliament, to put out numbers like that,
that seems to be...
It's a bit silly.
That's right. Just one question on disinvestment. Air India was sort of touted as a major privatization initiative of the government, but the government did not do much, rather could not do much. And the current year, the budget numbers show that Air India has been given 4,500 crore or something around that additional provision. But for the next year, once again, Air India has not been given any extra budgetary support. Now, does that give you a sense that government is still keen on Air India privatization, maybe after the elections?
Well, they tried once and they bungled it. They may well try again. But unless I'm mistaken, there is no money provided for further capitalization of the government banks.
That's right.
Now, are you suggesting that the recapitalization requirements are over? I don't think that is the case. 11 or 10 banks are still under the PCA control of the Reserve Bank. They need fresh capital. So, are you refusing to provide fresh capital?
Yeah, that's right. On the GST collections, and that's my final question, it seems that the government has dipped into the GST compensation fund and used it to bridge its revenue gap.
That is what is expected they would do.
That is what was expected. Now, it means that if next year the revenue projections have to be met, then it cannot be a sort of ongoing exercise every year, because GST compensation cess has got a sunset clause of after 5 years. So,
there's only 1.5 years over, and so that's still there. Also, the GST collection target for next year is not that ambitious. It's more or less, if I'm not wrong, close to the current year's original target. So it's not a big jump that they're anticipating.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ninan, for taking part in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you.